We ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. The war in Ukraine is escalating. We'll have the very latest news and analysis from our experts and from both Labour and Conservative spokespeople. And during what is a worrying time for all of us, I'll be asking England's Children's Commissioner how we should talk to our children about what they see on the TV. First, it's the news with Rosie. Good afternoon, it's 12 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The UK has stepped up sanctions against Russia, banning all ships with any connection to the country from entering British ports. The Prime Minister, who's currently in Poland, meeting the Polish Prime Minister and British troops, says Russia's president is using barbaric and indiscriminate tactics against civilians. Boris Johnson's also due to visit Estonia. Now, meanwhile, Ukraine is facing another day of heavy bombardment, with the mayor of Mariupol saying the port city is constantly being shelled. The Foreign Ministry's also released video showing a missile hitting a government building in the second biggest city, Kharkiv. The Foreign Minister described the attack as barbaric and is calling for more international sanctions against Russia. Satellite images show a Russian military convoy stretching for an estimated 40 miles northwest of the capital, Kiev. Craters can also be seen at a military airbase, and an oil terminal in the capital was damaged after being hit by Russian missiles. The UK's Ministry of Defence says Russia's made little progress in its advance on the capital in the last 24 hours. The International Criminal Court says it's going to open an investigation into possible war crimes. Amnesty International says cluster bombs hit a nursery last week, and Ukraine's ambassador to the US says Russia has used vacuum bombs. Both are banned under the Geneva Convention. The former UK and NATO commander, Colonel Hamish de Brenton-Gordon, says the weapons Russia are using are brutal.
We're now beginning to see the civilian casualties from cluster munitions, which are a war crime to use them, white phosphorus burning. We've heard about thermobaric weaponry. I think they're now colloquially called vacuum bombs, these fuel-air mixtures that suck oxygen out of the air and kill anything in its radius. So I think we're already seeing that, and it's classic Russian tactics.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has hit out at the sanctions his country has received. He made a remote appearance at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva after he was forced to cancel his in-person attendance due to EU states shutting their airspace to Russian planes. When Lavrov was announced as the next speaker, diplomats from the EU, Britain and the US walked out.
Members of the European Union have chosen a unilateral path of illegitimate sanctions, using them to evade a direct, honest, face-to-face dialogue, which they clearly apprehend. The situation in the world is not getting any easier. It is deteriorating. The main reason for this is that the US and its allies continue to aggressively impose the so-called rules-based world order.
Ukraine's ambassador to the UK has warned that Russia could try to starve residents in Ukraine's major cities in an attempt to win the war. Vadim Pastayko told the Commons Foreign Affairs Committee that civilian reaction to the invasion has been the complete opposite of what Vladimir Putin had hoped.
People are throwing the Molotov cocktails from their car, passing by Russian tanks. So all of this, all hands-on support and resilience is going so much against his plans. And people in Russia themselves start asking questions: what are we doing there and why?
More Western companies are expected to pull out of Russia, with Shell, for example, joining BP, selling its stake in all joint ventures with Gazprom. Walt Disney is also among several major Hollywood entertainment companies to pause film releases in Russia. Well, that group includes Sony Pictures and also Warner Brothers, who's anticipated the Batman film was due to be screened in Russia from Thursday. Of course, this is a rapidly developing story. We're endeavouring to keep you updated as soon as the situation changes on the ground. Let's turn our attention briefly, though, now to what else is happening today. And the UK government is being accused of adding to the cost of living crisis following the biggest rise in rail fares for nearly a decade. From today, ticket prices in England and Wales are 3.8% more expensive. The Campaign for Better Transport says the hike couldn't come at a worse time for commuters. Meanwhile, there's travel disruption in London. A significantly reduced tube service is running after all lines were initially suspended this morning. Thousands of underground workers are striking over jobs, pensions and conditions. Another 24-hour walkout is going to be held on Thursday. Knock-on effects are expected on the service tomorrow and Friday. You're now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head to Gloria for the briefing.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, the Prime Minister is in Eastern Europe today, aiming to show up support amongst allies as Putin's war on civilians intensifies. We'll be joined by Labour's shadow defence spokesperson shortly. Our security editor will have the latest developments on the Ukraine, and as desperate women and children flee in fear of their lives, we'll be asking whether Britain is doing enough to support them. And the news is worrying enough for us grown-ups at the moment. So how do we talk to our children about war and death? I'll hear from the Children's Commissioner for England. Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. This morning, Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, has been hit by a massive strike, while a huge convoy advances on the capital, Kyiv. It's a rapidly changing situation. Joining me now is our security editor, Mark White. Mark, the Prime Minister is in Warsaw. What has he been saying?
Yes, he arrived there this morning visiting the Polish capital, Warsaw, initially, met with his Polish counterpart, and he will be meeting with British troops out there, a few hundred British troops, now 600 actually, in Poland. 1,000 more on standby, according to the Prime Minister, to help out with the humanitarian crisis. And he also pledged £220 million of UK money to help with that growing refugee crisis on the Polish border. In the last couple of days now, the Polish government says that some 360,000 people have spilled over the border directly from Ukraine into Poland. And that situation, it was 500,000 who have crossed from Ukraine into other Baltic countries, but just Poland alone is 360,000 people, mainly women and children, coming across that border. The Prime Minister said that the British government would seek to help those refugees, people from Ukraine with relatives still in that region or now in Baltic countries, don't have to go through all of the rigmarole, the paperwork to get them over here. Now, the Prime Minister reckons that that might be upwards of 200,000 Ukrainians that will come to the UK in the coming days and weeks, and more, the Prime Minister said, would be done to help the refugees. This is a growing humanitarian crisis. The United Nations estimated that there were at least 7 million people who are internally displaced in Ukraine, who have fled the worst of the fighting and may well head for the borders of friendlier countries. So may well be heading over the border to places like Poland here in the days ahead.
And Mark, we are seeing some very worrying images coming out of Ukraine. Just talk us through how the crisis has escalated.
Yeah, these are images that have been coming to us this morning from Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, showing the main administrative building coming under missile attack. And it was a huge explosion. You could almost see the missile just very briefly in shot as it struck this building, causing immense damage to the building, outside the building and inside the building as well. Other images were circulating showing the outside square as filmed from the building itself, Freedom Square, with rubble strewn all across the square and inside, just utter devastation. We've been told that the rescue services have been digging under the rubble inside that building to try to search for any survivors. So far, we're told that at least 20 people have been injured. No word yet on a death toll. But in addition to what was happening at the ministry there, we were also getting reports from the Ukrainian government and the administrative government in Kharkiv of shelling of residential areas as well. The outside of the building, of this administrative building, showed every single window on the front of that building blown out by the ferocity of the blast there. In Kiev itself, the fighting has not been as intense. There have been air raid sirens throughout the morning sporadically. There has been occasional bursts of gunfire and missile attacks, but it's Kharkiv which seems to be bearing the brunt of it, as well as in the south of Ukraine, in Kherson, and of course in other southern and eastern areas where there have been fighting. Cherniv, which is north of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, has also been the subject of some significant fighting as well. But according to the UK Ministry of Defence, which has been analysing the situation on the ground, they say that that main armoured convoy that has been heading down towards Kiev has been making slow progress. It's now some 40 miles in length. Hundreds of vehicles, including tanks, personnel, armoured personnel carriers, other troop carriers, heading down towards the capital, Kiev. And it's making slow progress, partly because of the fierce resistance from the Ukrainian military and civilian militia, but also because of logistics problems. But it may be, of course, that Vladimir Putin's plan is not to engage in urban centres like Kiev, but maybe to encircle it. Certainly, they've been getting fierce resistance in Kharkiv and other cities, which have resulted, according to the Ukrainian Ministry for Defence, in significant losses on the Russian side. The Ukrainian military say that they have inflicted 5,700 casualties on the Russian military. We've no way of independently verifying that. We can only take it as a source, an official source from the Ukrainian military, saying that they have inflicted huge losses on the Russian forces. Certainly the UK Ministry of Defence say that it's not going all of Russia's way, that they are encountering fierce and stiff resistance from the Ukrainian military.
Mark White, our security editor, thank you so much for that update. Well, war in Europe has brought Conservative and Labour MPs together in condemning Putin's actions, and I'm delighted to be joined in the studio now by Lord Vernon Coker, Shadow Defence spokesperson for the Labour Party. Vernon, there has been a dramatic escalation. How do we respond in the West?
Well, I think continue what we've been doing and talk to the Ukrainians about whether there is more equipment, more military equipment that they need, more machinery, all of those sorts of things. And that's what the government have been doing. And alongside that, and they've had our full support in doing that. And of course, alongside the military support in terms of equipment, not troops, but in terms of the equipment, maybe there's more that we can do and we'll respond accordingly. And then alongside that, of course, the sanctions, which we see this morning and yesterday have started to bite. There's more to be done with that. And I know the government are going to come forward with further measures in terms of properties in London owned, hidden by Russian oligarchs. We need to expose that, and the government are coming forward with that. So the sanctions, the international alliances that are going on, the support for Ukraine itself. So all of that, and we need to do it as quickly as possible, but certainly no effort will be spared, and we'll support the government in the actions that they're taking.
Are we restricted in the sense that however tough we are talking, there are limits on what we can do, because we do not want to start World War III. We do not want to start a nuclear war.
Well, the limits we've placed are about not having troops on the ground. We heard the Defence Secretary yesterday saying about we couldn't enforce a no-fly zone because that would bring British fighter jets or NATO fighter jets in direct confrontation, potentially with Russian fighter jets. But we shouldn't. I mean, in terms of what we're doing a huge amount, and we'll do more if we need to in terms of that military equipment, in terms of the sanctions that are being imposed upon Russian oligarchs. And I think what we've seen and what Vladimir Putin has done, he's underestimated the unity of all of us in the rest of Europe and beyond in tackling the illegal invasion of the Ukraine that we've seen from him. And he's underestimated that. It's good to see people standing together. And of course, we'll carry on giving all the support we can to Ukraine in their efforts to resist the Russian invasion.
Are war crimes now being committed?
Well, certainly the ICC itself has said that there are worrying photographs, worrying images that have come out. Certainly if you've got a situation where children have been killed, flats, blocks of flats have been hit by missiles, there's certainly at the very least a need for it to be investigated, and that's what the ICC itself has said. But I think the important thing for all of us to say is that the ICC and others will look at what's going on. What's happening in the Ukraine, whoever is committing that is not immune from the international laws. And certainly I'm pleased that the ICC have said that they will look at whatever needs to be looked at as soon as they possibly can. And that's a good sign, I think.
The government has faced criticism over how much we're helping desperate people in terms of refugees. We know we'll be hearing from the Home Secretary in about an hour from now. And of course, we'll bring that live to GB News viewers. What is the Labour Party's criticism of the government when it comes to refugees?
Well, I think what we're saying is that all of us need to step up to the plate, including the UK, with respect to the millions of people, I think we just heard from the UNHCR, that are now being internally displaced. That puts a huge responsibility on nations, including the UK. And I think what worries us is the definition that the Home Secretary has used of immediate family members has been too restrictive. That needs to change. That needs to be extended. I mean, we've had situations where grandparents have not been able to come and be reunited with their family. Some of the criteria used for other family relatives is too restrictive. So that use of the word immediate needs to change. But above all, the principle, and I think the principle the British people would want, is that the British government and all of us need to recognise the responsibility that we have to support the refugees of fleeing war in the Ukraine. And I'm sure that's what the British people would want to see their government doing.
Would the Labour Party want to have any checks, any immigration checks on those countries?
Well, certainly there's always checks in terms of security, and you heard the Home Secretary talking about the need for that. Well, that always happens. Doesn't matter what rules or regulations you have with respect to immigration. There's always that sort of check. But certainly we need to be doing more. And as I said, at that point around what immediate family means has been too restrictive, and that needs to change. And certainly Yvette Cooper, as the Shadow Home Secretary, was saying that to the Home Secretary in Parliament yesterday and indeed today, and let's hope she responds to that.
Your leader, Keir Starmer, has criticised what he calls apologists for Putin in the Labour Party. What does he mean by that?
Well, I think he's not only talked about it, he's actually acted. And we saw 11 MPs, and I think it was 3, I think I'm right in saying 3 Labour peers who signed a Stop the War petition. And he was very, very quickly out saying, you either withdraw your names or you're going to lose the whip. So that's action, not just words. And he was very clear about that. And all of those people, without exception, withdrew their names. So I think that speaks volumes for his attitude. And again, you at the Parliamentary Labour Party spoke of
last night, the meeting of all
MPs and peers. He was very clear about saying to them that we stand with the government on this. There's no room within the Labour Party for apologists for what Putin is doing, and he was very clear about that, and I fully support him in what he said.
Do you think it's a widespread view, not just on the bench as green or perhaps red too, but is it a sentiment that is amongst the Labour Party membership too?
No, I don't think so on this. I think, I mean, if we look at the history of the Labour Party and the Labour movement, after the Second World War, we established the nuclear deterrent. We were at the forefront of establishing NATO. So we have a proud tradition in the Labour movement. So I don't think it's widespread. But what I do think was important was that the leader of the Labour Party in Keir Starmer turned around and said, this is not widespread, but I'm not having a situation where a sovereign, independent nation is invaded by somebody else in Europe, something we thought had been confined to the dustbin of history. There is no prevarication on that. This is absolutely, we are opposed to it, and as a party and as a movement, we're united against it.
And just to look at the end game here, of course, everyone's talking tough. Militarily, Putin is acting tough. Actually, what everyone wants is for a breakout of peace. Is that fantasy? Can it happen?
No, it's not fantasy. At some point, there will be some sort of agreement, some sort of settlement, some sort of after what's happened now. But I think what people will want to know and what people will want to see is that whatever the future holds, it sees a reassertion of the principles on which peace in Europe has been established over the last, or since the end of the Second World War. That's an international rules-based order in which people comply to the rules that exist. And territorial integrity, self-determination, sovereignty are respected. And look, this is not only an issue for Europe. Across the world, as we've seen from countries in Africa and beyond, have said this is important because we can't have somebody acting as an autocrat in the way they are and just taking the action they are and invading the territory of another sovereign nation. This is, of course, something that matters to Europe. And I think what people want to see is a fair outcome for the Ukrainian people and one that reasserts the rules-based order on which the whole system in Europe and beyond has to be based.
Should we be worried about nuclear war? Are you worried about nuclear war?
Well, I think it was it was chilling, wasn't it, when Vladimir Putin said he's going to put that up to move it to another level. But the Defence Secretary said yesterday, and I think I'm quoting him correctly, and said these are words, a rhetoric rather than meaningful threats as such. But of course it's chilling. Of course nobody wants to hear that. But I think what we should be worried about and what we need to be worried about is how we support the Ukrainian people. It's clearly not going to plan. We clearly need to continue to do all we can to support the Ukrainian people with military equipment where necessary, with humanitarian aid, and also support the countries, the NATO members that are around the Ukraine, and give a clear message to the President Putin that he's crossed the line and we're not prepared to accept it.
Very clear. Vernon Coker, Labour's defence spokesperson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good to see you. The Prime Minister is in Poland and Estonia today as the government pushes for greater support for the Ukraine, but it is being criticised over its response to the growing refugee crisis. Our political correspondent Tom Howard will be here and will talk us through this morning's events in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The Prime Minister is in Poland and Estonia today. Joining me now in the studio to discuss the latest UK response is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, what's the Prime Minister said today?
Well, the Prime Minister is obviously in Poland to try and present a very united front across the Western world. And that's been a relative success of the last week or so, despite the onslaught that the Ukrainian people have found from the Russian regime. What the West has done is really speak largely with one voice. And this is very important to the British government, the American government, and to the Europeans, because it provides a sense of morale, a sense that the world is backing Ukraine, and that allows the people in Ukraine to fight on in a way that they may be less minded to do so in the face of such gargantuan odds against them. This is a real David versus Goliath fight in Ukraine. So the Prime Minister's visit to Poland is not just about making sure that the West stays united in the way that it has been, but also to strengthen that partnership, particularly with Poland, which is the country through which we are providing Ukraine with that support, both in terms of non-lethal aid and indeed in terms of lethal aid. We've sent anti-tank missiles and much more. Indeed, the Prime Minister is speaking to President Zelensky of Ukraine on an almost daily basis. And we understand that actually within those phone calls, Zelensky makes specific requests for equipment that the UK can then provide to Ukraine. And we're seeing almost daily transports from the UK through Poland into Ukraine to provide the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army with the support that they need.
We'll be hearing from the Home Secretary. She'll be addressing Parliament in the not too distant future, probably about 45 minutes or so. It's the Home Secretary, so we'll expect her to say something about refugees. And the government has come under criticism about how generous or not we are being to desperate people. Do we expect to see some changes in the government's measures to help refugees today?
I think I'd be surprised to see a big change today. The government's been clear so far that it wants to have an iterative process, that there'll be different elements to our refugee policy when it comes to Ukraine. What I would expect today is greater clarity on what that announcement that we sort of heard yesterday was. There's 100,000 people, the family members of those who are resident in this country. That scheme will be expanded upon today in all likelihood, and of course there'll be many questions about it. Although when it comes to wider schemes of those who don't have family connections in the UK, I don't think we're going to hear much about that today, because there's so much work that goes into all of these policies, and they've been being created in the last few days even. I know that the Home Office is working incredibly hard on this. I think it would be unlikely to see a big step change in that refugee policy at this moment in time. But I do understand that the government is expecting to say more on this in sort of different stages, in different processes. At first it is those who have immediate family and their ability to come, and we may see more later on.
So we'll probably expect to see some Conservative MPs criticising their own government, not loads, but there are some who are raising concerns.
Oh, there certainly are, and not least under pressure from their constituents. We saw yesterday that a YouGov poll came out showing 77% of Brits want visa-free travel for those fleeing Ukraine. And it's interesting to look at those who are fleeing Ukraine, to look at those pictures that I'm sure we've all seen of women and children on trains being waved off by their fathers who are staying behind to fight. This is an entirely different situation to some of the pictures of refugees that people have seen in recent years, where, looking at the English Channel, for example, sometimes it looks like it's boats full of young men. And I think maybe there's a difference there in terms of what people are willing to accept as a society. But also there's the view that Ukraine, this is a war that the West is backing the Ukrainians on, that maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but sometime in the near future, we want to see a Ukraine that is once again free, democratic, and free of Russian invading forces. So these refugees would not be coming to make an entirely new life here. They would be coming to stay until such time as to which they can return to their country, until such time as we have defeated the Russian regime. So for all of those reasons, I think there is a greater sense that there should be a more welcoming policy to some of those who are fleeing Ukraine. And after all, many may not want to come to the UK. There are only around 30,000 Ukrainians currently living in the UK, and there are going to be lots of other countries before you get to the UK that may be a better fit for some of those leaving, not least because they may not want to leave geographically that far from Ukraine, where much of their family, mainly men, staying behind in many cases to fight. So there are lots of different elements to this, but certainly political pressure, not least from many Conservative backbenchers. Indeed, one minister I spoke to yesterday saying that they think that this could be something that the UK might be getting less right than the rest of its response. And so certainly a lot of pressure with regards to doing more, at least to offer, if not accept, more Ukrainian refugees.
And of course, we'll be bringing GB News viewers that statement live when the Home Secretary is on her feet. Thanks, Tom, as ever. Next, how do we talk to our kids about the war? We'll speak to England's Children's Commissioner. But first is the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The UK has stepped up sanctions against Russia, banning all ships with any connection to the country from entering British ports. The Prime Minister, who's in Poland meeting his counterparts along with British troops, says evidence of President Putin's attacks on civilians could be used in a future trial at The Hague.
Vladimir Putin is prepared to use barbaric and indiscriminate tactics against innocent civilians, to bomb tower blocks, to send missiles into tower blocks, to kill children, as we're seeing in increasing numbers.
Ukraine is facing another day of heavy bombardment, with the mayor of Mariupol saying the port city is constantly being shelled. The Foreign Ministry released this video showing a missile hitting the administration building in the second largest city, Kharkiv. The country's foreign minister has described it as barbaric and is calling for more international sanctions against Russia. Satellite images show a Russian military convoy stretching now for approximately 40 miles northwest of the capital, Kiev. Craters at a military airbase can also be seen, as well as an oil terminal, which was damaged after being hit by missiles. The UK's Ministry of Defence says Russia has made little progress in its advance on the capital in the last 24 hours. In an address to the European Parliament, Ukraine's president said 16 children have been killed in a Russian attack.
Ніхто не зламає нас. Ми сильні, ми українці. У нас є, знаєте, бажання, щоб наші діти жили. Мені здається, що це чесно. Вчора 16 дітей загинуло. І знов президент Путін скаже, що це якась там операція, і ми б'ємо по військовій інфраструктурі. Де наші діти? На яких вони військових заводах працюють? На яких ракетах вони? Може, вони в танках їздять?
We'll bring you more developments as we get them here on GB News. You are now up to date. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the briefing with Gloria.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Being the Children's Commissioner for England is a big job. It includes protecting the rights of children, especially those who are vulnerable, and also standing up for their views and interests. This month, Dame Rachel de Souza celebrates a year in the position. We want to look at the work she has done and what still needs to be done. Delighted to welcome her to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Great
it's really
to be
nice to
here.
see you.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yesterday, you, along with the Children's Commissioners for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, wrote to the Prime Minister calling for safe passage of refugee children from the Ukraine to the UK. Why did you think that was important?
So I think we're all watching this valiant fight in the Ukraine, and children particularly are talking to me about their concerns about children in the Ukraine. So I just wanted to bring the fate of children to the Prime Minister's attention with my colleagues, and to make sure that we really are thinking of them, particularly in this really difficult time.
Might say it's not really in your remit to discuss immigration policy. How would you respond?
Yeah, absolutely right. I tell you what I do think. I think that for the first time a generation of children, our children in England, are seeing war in Europe for the first time. So, the millennials grew up with the Sarajevo War. We look back, and the last generation before that was in the late 40s. But it's different now because the children now have cultural references, whether it's Eurovision, whether it's the Champions League. They understand and have cultural references and feel connected with Ukrainian children, and they want to know what to do, and they want to help. And they've been reaching out to me and saying they want to help. And parents have been reaching out and saying, how do we talk about this situation with our children as well? And I think children can be empowered, and we need to talk to our children in a way that doesn't hide what's happening, but helps them, really try to understand it and feel they can do something about it. And you know what? My grandfather was Ukrainian. He came to England after the war. He was one of that small number of Ukrainians who settled here, and I grew up speaking Ukrainian. And in fact, my first civic act was to write to the then Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher, when I was a little girl, in Ukrainian, to try to free a dissident called Valentine Moroz. And everybody said, why are you bothering? You're just a child. Well, Mrs. Thatcher wrote back to me in Ukrainian, and he was free 6 months later. And I want our children to realise that they can write, they can help, they can try and be part of the solution. They're incredibly caring, the children of England, and they care about the children of Ukraine. And I've been talking to my opposite number in the Ukraine, the children's commissioner, person who does that work over there, and sent a message from England's children, which I'll read to you in Ukrainian. Diti Anchli, Dumayuch Provas, the children of England are thinking of you. And I just want to show solidarity with the women and children over there who are facing so much.
Very clear. Now, when it comes to parents and actually teachers who are wondering how to speak to children about the current crisis, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, so I think it's really important not to try to hide it. As I said, children are seeing things on social media, so we need to have an honest talk with our children. I've been talking to lots of head teachers about how to do that. They've been doing assemblies, and I think mums and dads, children will be afraid. They'll be thinking about children waking up in the Ukraine and not necessarily fearing for their lives. School's been gone, and I think we have to be honest about it. But again, I think there's something very powerful, and that's why I gave you that example of me writing my letter to Mrs. Thatcher and her replying and something happening. Children can write to the Ukrainian embassy. They can write to their MPs about, trying to get this war stopped, trying to support Ukraine, or, to remain free. I think MPs and the embassy will welcome those, and children will feel they've done something. I've seen some really good examples of people collecting things like shoes for children and things for children, and getting them taken over to the Ukraine. I think those practical things help children. Children can feel a tremendous solace of being part of a community with their adults that are trying to understand and comprehend these terrible images and terrible issues. So bringing them in, talking to them, but also letting our children know they are protected and safe with us as well.
Thank you for that. Let's broaden it out a bit. You've had a busy year and you conducted the largest survey of children that's ever been done, something called a Big Ask. Over 500,000 individual responses. What struck you most about what you heard from children?
It was so exciting to get so many responses. So the Secretary of State told me he didn't think I'd get any more than 100,000. And actually, we got so many, 557, 100,000, so over 500,000, that I crashed the DFE website at least 3 times. We got so many responses. So we basically asked children last April and May, as they were coming out of lockdown, what do you need to thrive now and what do you want for your futures? And I went, as well as putting out a survey, I went around the country. I went from Gateshead to Handsworth to Bristol to Grimsby to Scunthorpe, everywhere, and talked to children in school and talked to them in secure mental health units. I went to youth prisons. I went everywhere that there are children and asked them. So what did they tell us? You know what? The really interesting thing is 80% of children told us they were happy with their lives. You don't hear that one very often. You normally hear like all the, what's wrong. 80% told us they were happy. And the other thing is, whatever background they came from, poor, wealthy, north, south, whatever issue, whatever race, whatever, they told us they wanted the same things. So coming out of lockdown, they wanted to feel well, to be back with their friends. They wanted to be back at school, and they wanted places to go and things to do, not shopping centres. They wanted sports. The children of Luton wanted cricket competitions, community competitions. Everywhere had different ideas for their futures. Really, really interesting. Number one thing the children told us, they want a really good job. And they want a career, and they want to be able to create a good life. Family really mattered to them. Where children were upset, it was often because there were problems with the family. Family mattered to them, friends mattered to them, and their communities. This is a really civic-minded generation. They feel part of their communities, and they wanted to do things to help and support their communities. Very interested in fairness, very interested in the environment. So I took some of them to COP26 and worked with children there. But overall, it was like a real sense of, I think they're like a post-war generation. I think it was sleeves up. They want to work hard. They want to try to create good jobs, and they're really proud of their communities and their country. So it was really worth doing. And I've set myself the task now of my next 5 years delivering for them on all those things. Like they wanted to know more about adult life. They wanted to know about apprenticeships, how to get good jobs, all absolutely fascinating stuff.
That's heartwarming, actually, that 80% of our children who replied are happy. Let's look, though, at the most recent NHS figures from this month, showing that more than a third of children are stuck on waiting lists for mental health treatment. Who's to blame for that? It's not right, is it?
Yeah, so basically the number one problem when we looked at what are the problems, mental health, mental well-being came out as number one. And a lot of, so that's one in, that's 20% of children said that was the biggest issue they felt for their generation. And a lot of that, they really felt if they could just get back to school, just talk to someone, talk to trusted adults, play with their friends, they were going to be all right. But you're absolutely right. There's a acute end, a serious end, where children are needing to get really good mental health support, and they're spending too long on waiting lists and waiting too long for that support. Now, I've just done a survey of all the CCGs, all the mental health support for children in the country, and what I can tell you is the government spent 4.4% more this year on children's mental health. Waiting lists have come down. So they've come down from 46 days to 35 days wait. But that masks the fact that in some local areas, you're only waiting 8 days. And in some areas, you're still waiting. So there's real regional differences. So I've been challenging the NHS and others and saying, great, you put more money in, great, it's getting better overall, but there's such a difference depending where you live in the country. And it's not obvious. You can have two places next door to each other, where one place, like Scunthorpe, for example, is spending 2% of its budget on children's mental health. That's really high. Whereas, their next door neighbour is spending less than 1%. 1% is the NHS target. So I think I want to say well done, for spending more, but it's against the backdrop of lots more mental health concerns, too many people still waiting, and too much variation in the area. Look, it's an investment to support children who've got serious issues with their mental health, because we need to get them right so they can be those successful adults that they've really told us they want to be. I mean, we sometimes get confused, Gloria, because sometimes children talk about mental health like they talk about physical health. So I fell over and hurt my knee. Someone's got a really serious illness. It's same with mental health. I'm feeling a bit sad. My mental well-being's not great. My mental health's not great. And I've got a really serious problem, and we need to differentiate between those. But they're definitely serious mental health issues have gone up. the lockdown. Children have talked to me about parents who've died, been separated from family, feeling really upset. We need to meet those needs.
Rachel D'Souza, it's been really interesting to talk to you. I hope you come back on the channel soon, because there's so much more to discuss with you, but very grateful for your time. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much. Lovely to meet you.
And that is the Children's Commissioner for England, Rachel D'Souza. Now, amid widespread outrage at what's happening in Ukraine, in this country, and many others, some people want to volunteer to fight. Encouraged in part by our own Foreign Secretary, our national reporter Paul Hawkins has been speaking with volunteers outside the Ukrainian embassy.
Jason Luck, who came to the Ukrainian embassy yesterday. Jason, thank you for speaking to us on GB News. First of all, why do you want to go and fight in Ukraine?
You know, people have got the wrong idea. It's not I want to go and fight, it's just because of my family. Obviously, you know, that is my priority. Fighting isn't my priority, but it's going to be one of those inevitable things that I've got to do.
Yeah. So, just to explain to our viewers, you've got your daughter who's in Nikolaev, and you've got your wife and stepson who are in Mariupol.
No, Zaporozhia.
In Zaporozhia.
Not far from Mariupol.
Not far from Mariupol, yeah, which is really close to Donetsk.
Well, yeah, but Mariupol is under heavy bombardment at the moment. And like I said, we're 100 kilometres away, so who knows? Luckily, my partner, she says that everything's fine at the moment, and it's calm. Whether she's lying to me or not, I don't know, but I've heard the sirens go a few times. She said it's all calm, but I think she's telling me things to stop me worrying. I don't know what's going to happen. I honestly don't.
I mean, how have the past few weeks been for you, being here on your own in the UK with your family out there?
Well, to be honest, I would have gone weeks and weeks ago. I planned to go weeks and weeks ago, but obviously financially, it's been difficult. So, obviously, because I've got to support them and a few other families, it's been really hard. So now it's come to that point where it's going to get worse before it gets better. Well, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Yeah. And like I said to you earlier, I think this is the calm before the storm.
You think there's more to come from the Russians?
I think he's got every intention of capturing Zelensky alive, and I think, personally speaking, I think that's his plan. Because he's too soft. You know, the way the Russians are acting at the moment is too soft.
So on Saturday you're flying to Ukraine, and then what will be your journey then? And you're taking all your equipment from your 12 years serving as a British soldier.
Well, no, it's a lot later kit than that. Yeah. I've got equipment out there, but obviously I can't get to it. Obviously because it's in the east, so it's no good to me. So I'm taking my own kit out with me that I've got. So.
And it's extraordinary that you're willing to fight for Ukraine. I know your family are Ukrainian, but you're willing to go out there and fight for them.
Yeah, but I'm Ukrainian by proxy. You know, it's my home as well. So I can't face Ukrainians if I haven't bothered to try and do anything. You know, and later on, I'm going to need their help. They're going to need my help. Do you see what I'm saying? It's going to be like that.
Yeah. But your mum's here. How does here in the UK? How does she feel about you going out to fight for Ukraine?
Don't know. My mum is not overly keen on Yulia, and she's worried about Dasha, of course, but she's not happy about me going out there. No. I mean, we basically had a big row about it last night, so I just, some people not supporting it. Even my own, Yulia's not supporting it. She's saying, why are you coming? Why are you coming? We're perfectly fine, but.
And why won't she come here to the UK?
Oh, she's got several reasons. Max, who sees me as his father, he's autistic, quite badly autistic. He's also got disabilities because he can't walk easily. His feet are sort of sideways out. She's got that reason. Her mum's dying. Her mum's up from the Donetsk region, and she's dying. So they've not given her long to live. I mean, last I heard, this was a week ago, it was 2 months. So I can understand where she's coming from. But,
and you have experience of fighting in Ukraine. You were there a few years ago. Yeah, just tell us a bit about that, what you can tell us.
Well,
how difficult it was.
It's, especially for me, because it's a different language. I speak some Russian, but, when you're dealing with these guys... there's a lot of multinational. With us, there was a lot Georgian, even Swedes, you know. So it's a difficult one, and communication problem. You know, there's going to be communication problems. We had all that out there. We're going to have the same thing this time. It's going to be the communication, and it's, you know, with lots of foreign people wanting to fight, you know, it's going to be a very difficult situation.
Yeah, different from last time. Professional. This is a professional army you're facing, not separatists.
No, these are not, you know, guys in uniform. These are not, you know, now they've been trained. They've been trained by the Canadians, the British, the Americans. They've been trained well. You know, that is the difference. Back then, it was left to volunteer battalions, as of Sector, Radar, Nipple 1. So it's a completely different scenario now.
Listen, Jason, we wish you all the best for Saturday when you're heading out to Ukraine, right, and also for your family as well. Jason, luck there, who's heading out to Ukraine on Saturday. Many other British nationals as well heading out there, it seems, over the coming days, trying to find a route over to Ukraine to fight for the Ukrainian forces.
Thank you, Paul. Now, our next guest is Henry Smith, Conservative MP and member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Henry, good to see you back on the show. I was reading what you wrote on your website yesterday. You said freedom is not free. There will be a cost to us in Britain. There is, however, no alternative. What might the cost be to British people?
Well, I think some of the immediate costs could potentially be increases in food prices. Ukraine is a major supplier of grain, not only to Europe and the world, but also the energy impact. Obviously, we are cutting off the supply of Russian gas, and while the United Kingdom only gets about 3% of its gas from the Russian Federation, nevertheless, there will be an impact on global markets as well. So there will be costs, but as I said in that article, freedom isn't free. And if we don't stand up to the actions of a dictator like Putin, who is willing to kill innocent civilians and invade sovereign democratic nations, then we're next.
Final question. I'm sorry, it'll have to be brief. But the Home Secretary is going to address MPs shortly. She's come under criticism for not being generous enough to refugees. What do you want her to say?
Well, I think this country has been extraordinarily generous to the Ukrainian people during this crisis. And she has announced routes for up to 100,000 Ukrainians to be able to get shelter in this country. But actually, I think most Ukrainians want to remain in the region. They have closer links to Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, other neighbouring countries, and it's probably best that they are supported there. But Britain will play its full part, as it always does.
Henry, great to have you. Sorry it was short. We'll speak again soon. Very grateful to have you. Join me tomorrow at 10 to 12 for Prime Minister's Questions. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. Now, let's see what the weather is up to.
Hello again. It's a sunny day across much of the northern half of the UK. Further south, much more cloud, and particularly southwest England having a very wet Tuesday afternoon. High pressure is dominating, but these weather fronts have never completely cleared away, still draped across East Anglia and the southeast. And as this low moves up, the rain is going to pep up this afternoon for Devon and Cornwall. So turning wetter here. Rain and drizzle on and off from Hampshire up towards parts of East Anglia and down towards Kent, but from the Midlands northwards, most of Wales dry, fine, and certainly North Wales northwards, lots of sunshine, just a few showers across the Northern Isles. Temperatures responding to a bit of sunshine across the north, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 or 11 there in Aberdeen, and 10 Celsius along the south coast of England, 10 for Southampton and Plymouth, but feeling cooler here because of the rain, which will be quite heavy this evening, especially for Devon, Cornwall, parts of Somerset, slowly edging into south and then mid-Wales and into parts of the Midlands as we go through the night, and the rain returning to southeast England as well. Elsewhere, most places dry with the clear skies. Across Scotland, a cold one here. -3, -4 through some sheltered glens further south. We're well above freezing, starting at 6 or 7 in Cardiff and Birmingham. But we will start with cloud and rain here on Wednesday, a dull, damp, pretty dismal day, and that rain will extend to Northern Ireland, so a much soggier day here tomorrow compared to today. Patchy rain for northwest England. Much of eastern England will be dry. Most of Scotland also dry with plenty of sunshine across the Highlands once more. Temperatures, again, high single figures, low double digits in the south, 11 in Cardiff, maybe maybe 10 or 11 in London, but again, feeling cooler with the cloud and the patchy rain, which will continue to drift northwards on Wednesday. More rain creeping in by this stage from the Atlantic as well, bringing